what does finding your limit in a race look like to you, and how do you know when you're getting close to that red line?
Oh, I literally can't answer that question. Find, because it's so well. There's a couple of things I can't answer the question. It's just in a roundabout way. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a couple of things in 1500, and the first thing is your fitness. Right, your limit changes depending on your fitness. And this year, I found out that what my limit was, I thought, yeah, that's still my limit. But because I wasn't in the same shape, often I crossed the line and I paid the price to because I thought that was my limit again. And there's a couple of indicators on what you can kind of feel your limit, and one of them is the clock. So at Diamond Leagues and World Championships and stuff, there's always the clock every 100 meters, so you can look over and be like, and there's all this mental math going on in your head. Actually, this is a funny realization I've just had. It actually feels like you're sprinting. That's the line.
Right.
It
Yeah.
feels like you're sprinting, and
Damn.
as soon as you take your foot off the gas, you realized, oh, that was the line. But the difference is, I tell people this: there's not much difference between 3:35 and 3:30. The only difference
Mm.
is the guy who ran 3:35 probably took his foot off the gas when it hurt. The guy who runs
Yeah.
3:30 didn't take his foot off the gas.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, that's literally the best way to do it. Like sometimes my races when I've run 3:31, I've borderline felt like I'm like hanging on for dear life. The thread is like the rubber band is about to break. That's how you
Yeah.
know where you're on the limit. When you're feeling like you can't just comfortable, there's no comfort. There's no comfort at all of being on the back of someone. Generally, like if you're going for a run, you're running with someone and they're kind of pushing the pace. You're puffing, but you can stay on their shoulder.
Hmm.
And then if they push the pace really hard and you start to be like, I'm getting dropped a little bit, that's
Yeah.
the line.
Yeah.
And when you're fit, that line's kind of you can hold the line longer. But when you're not
Hmm.
fit, you you actually cross the line, and then a couple minutes later or a minute later, you're just like
Blow up.
you just
Yeah.
you pay the price in a really hard way. I've had a couple of races where I've crossed the line real bad,
Yeah.
thinking I was actually fitter than I was, and then my last 100 meters I probably ran like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Like luckily I
Damn.
don't have those videos on film, but
Yeah. Yeah. Would
it's
you say that you would rather leave it out on the track like that, or would you say that that's like a dumb race, to use your word? Like, would you
nah,
rather blow up in the last 100 rather
yeah,
than like crossing over the line and be like, oh, that was easy?
yeah. Yeah, I yes, definitely. I think
Yeah.
I there's a couple of regretful races where I'm like, "Ugh, should have just pushed the boundaries a little more,
Yeah.
especially when I was fit and I could have backed my fitness. So last year, the example I'm thinking of is at the semi final at World Champs. I crossed the line. And I was like, that was the easiest race of my life. That was
Mm,
unbelievably easy, and I didn't make it because
yeah.
I tactically just made an error where I know exactly the moment where I shouldn't have made that error, and it was purely a weakness in the of the mind decision of going I'm going to take that easy option when I should have taken the just stay wide and hold your
Yeah.
position, because the guy who was on my shoulder made the final, but
Yeah.
I was I think in better shape than him or this particular dude because I'd been beating him all season and my PB was still faster than his after the final. So it was like, that it was
Man.
definitely it was my race for the losing, and I lost it. Um, whereas there has been races like the repechage this year where
Yeah.
I'm like, Craig just said, my coach just said, go for it and get out hard and hold your position and do not let it go. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And so I held my position. I got up the front. I got on it, and I was like, as soon as I was in front of Ollie, and I was like, oh man, what have I done?
Yeah.
And so I like, oh, it was very regretful, but um, it was good to know. Look, last year the pace wouldn't have bothered me.
Hmm.
This because I looked across, it was like 56 point. I'm like, I've gone out in 56 before and been totally fine. And
Yeah.
this year, so I wasn't freaking out completely, but then I was just gutted because my body wasn't in the same shape as it was last year. But I ran out and I crossed the line after the repechage. Obviously, heavily disappointed because I was like, I'm not making an Olympic semi final or final, which was my goal. Um, but I know that I literally did everything I possibly could to cross the line, or to make that semi final. And so I was like, you know what? After 6 weeks of training to get to where I was from not running, that's pretty good effort. I gave it a freaking good crack,
It's
and
huge,
I'm
man.
proud of the effort that I gave. And that's really all I could ask for. As disappointing as the result was, and what I thought I was capable of, this year, it was a pretty, something I can be pretty proud of.
Absolutely, man. And there's such an interplay that you're getting at there between fitness and mindset. And
Mm,
it sounds like maybe the perfect race, if it exists, is your fitness and your mindset being at the same level. Like you
yeah,
talk about races there where your fitness was at its peak, but then your mindset wasn't there. Whereas
yeah,
like this time it's like maybe your fitness isn't quite there, but then your mindset's really strong. It's almost like the perfect combo is being able to get your fitness at its peak and then also your mindset or your strategy in the right place.
yeah. I think that's what differentiates the best guys in the world from the rest, is the guys who know their fitness and can adjust their mindset perfectly to
Mm,
that, to make it
yeah.
work for their advantage. Because you could have the best mindset in the world. Like, often I feel like I've got a really strong mindset, but I don't adjust it to my fitness's ability, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm.
I'm like, I can be tough. I'm not going to get dropped. And then I back myself, but I back myself in the wrong areas. Like, I back my kick, which is actually a
Yeah.
stupid mindset to have, because if you're at the back, it doesn't matter if you back your kick or not. You can't
Yeah.
pass everyone.
Yeah, you can't pass
It's
the whole
just like,
field. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like, yeah, I'm backing my kick. I'm like, I can run the fastest 400-meter split. Like, who gives a crap? You're at the back.
yeah.
You can't pass 10 guys, man.
Yeah.
Like,
You got to get in the position first to then
yeah,
use that.
yeah, exactly. And so those guys are like, you could be less fit, but because you've mastered your mindset, you put yourself in the right spot, and you can actually make the most of your fitness, which is
Mm,
actually awesome to see. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's such an interesting sport, man. Like I knew there'd be some strategy to it, but I never knew like how many tactics and planning and positioning and go into it because
oh,
it's
nuts.
only a few minutes, but a lot can happen in that few minutes, right? And if you don't get yourself into a good position, exactly like you're saying there, yeah, you might have the best last 200 meters, but if you're at the back, you might get fifth. Whereas if you were
Yeah,
in fifth and then had the best last 200 meters, you could be on the podium.
yeah, exactly.
Mm,
I mean, Cole Locker, right, with 200 meters to go, was in. Well, I guess he was in third or fourth. Anyway, comes up the inside, boom,
it's gone.
gold medal.
Ah, man.
Positioning.
Another thing I found quite interesting in that podcast